Now, today's show, we have got a milestone whereby the official collaboration between Maxwell Ren Inc. and Quantum Valuations. So, congratulations to both teams on forging a paradigm shift collaboration that will redefine how the world approaches intangible assets and M&A strategies. Now, Maxwell Ren, in a strategic collaboration with Quantum, brings a precision focus on unlocking business growth through the combined power of intangible asset valuations and technology-driven M&A strategies in the golden age of AI. In the emerging hybrid economy, where digital platforms, algorithms, and proprietary data often hold more value than physical assets, many organizations still underestimate their true worth. So, Tim and Ian, now here's a question that is directed to both of you all. What exactly are intangible assets in today's innovation-driven economy, and why do they now make up most of corporate value?
Thank you for the question, Vijay. So if we start with the formal definition under accounting standards, which is IAS 38, it describes intangible assets as identifiable non-monetary assets without a physical substance. And if you look at the international valuation standards, it puts it more plainly by describing these assets as assets that don't have a physical form, but they grant rights and economic benefits to their owner. Now, that's the technical definition, but in practical terms, what does it mean? It means the things you can't touch, but which increasingly define a company's competitiveness. So things such as your patents, your software, your algorithms, your brand, data, relationships, trade secrets, and know-how. And now here's what's remarkable. So over the last half century, the very foundation of business value has flipped. In 1975, intangible assets made up approximately 17% of total business value. But by 2020, that number has surged to around 90%, and it has stayed there ever since, according to a well-known Ocean Tomo study. Now, to put that in dollar terms, just 3 decades ago, the global value of intangibles is approximately 8 trillion US dollars. And today, it's over 80 trillion. So that's not just a statistic, it is a measurable shift in what truly drives business value worldwide. And this isn't just happening in Silicon Valley or New York, but across the USA, Europe, Australasia, Southeast Asia, the same trend holds, and anywhere between 50 to 90% of enterprise value is now comprised of intangible assets. And why is that? Because in today's economy, competitive advantage isn't built on your machineries, your real estate, factories, or your fleet of trucks. It's built on ideas, innovation, and information. But here's where it gets interesting. Not all industries lean on the same intangibles. You'll find that in different industries, some intangible assets are more valuable than others. But what differs is their relative importance, the momentum of the categories of intangible assets in driving business growth, and the integrated contribution of these intangibles. So to give you an example, in pharmaceutical and biotech, patents and R&D are the king assets. In technology space, software, your data, and algorithms, these are your core drivers. Whereas in luxury goods and consumer brands, reputation and branding often matter more than the physical product itself. And yet, under the current accounting rules, we only see a fraction of this value show up on the balance sheet. The current standards only allow for recognition if the intangible asset has been acquired. For instance, if you're buying a patent, or if you're licensing an IP, or acquiring a brand in an M&A deal. Some R&D expenses can be capitalized, but most internally generated value, such as your in-house brand, your culture, your customer loyalty, these cannot be recognized at all. That's why you can have two businesses with the same balance sheet assets, but wildly different market values, because one is driven by intangible asset strength that accounting simply doesn't capture. And what this means for companies is that they are leaving value unmeasured, they are leaving it on the table, and it represents a strategic blind spot.
Now, how does Quantum's methodology adapt to complex global IP portfolios?
I'll do this one. Ian's done such a great job on the first question. I guess, Vijay, the first component, you mentioned the word complex, and there's no denying that IP assets of all intangibles are very complex. And that's one of the reasons that there can be big differences in valuations between the findings of a specialist valuer of IP assets as opposed to a business valuer who just occasionally dabbles in IP valuation. And it's not so much the methodologies that differ, but the way in that which they're applied. So Damodaran, the great valuer, describes valuation as a craft. So it's not a science, it's not an art, it's a craft. But you have to have the tools, but you have to learn and understand how to apply those tools and when which tool is appropriate. And I think the first thing I would say is that at Quantum Valuations, we don't dive into the number crunching. We first make sure that we understand the mechanics of the business. We always think about the cogs in a business model, like the old cogs in a watch or a machine. Some are big, some are small, they fit together. In this instance, they're driving cash flows. But as Ian said, in different industries, you can have very different cogs and different sizes. And even in the same industry, depending on the strategy, depending on the competitive advantage, you can have a different kind of mechanism. So the first thing is we understand, we call it intangible value mapping to identify how the business works. And then once we've identified those most important cogs, we do a deep dive asset assessment, which is a kind of full spectrum assessment.
Now, can you share a success story where accurate valuation changed the trajectory of a deal or a company growth?
Yes, well, one that comes to mind, I get asked this question sometimes and I try and mix them up so that I don't get bored in the stories, but the one that's top of mind at the moment, I'll go into, and I think just sort of rephrasing your question a little bit, it's not just the results of the valuation, but it's that kind of support of the deep understanding of the assets together with the valuation that really gets
complementing each other, right?
Yes, you can have the same number, but
Right.
one number people will say, get out of here, I don't believe that number.
Right.
Whereas
Right.
the other one will make sense because they can see that you factored in the risk and the characteristics of
Right.
the asset. But the example comes to mind is a company that had invented an item of industrial equipment, and this was in a market that had been stagnant for 20 years or more. Same old equipment had been used and everyone just thought that the way it was. So this was potentially disruptive. Now, it was pre-revenue. They developed a prototype, and the good news was that that prototype had been subject to pretty extensive testing, both safety testing, being electrical equipment, but also performance testing. The other thing is that the business owner had a corporate background. He was a good player. He presented a very solid business plan and a well-constructed financial model. But despite that, they just weren't getting any traction with sophisticated investors. You've probably heard the story before. They wanted market validation.
Right.
They almost wanted the upside potential or the risk, but then without the risk.
They want to be the second first.
Yes, exactly. That's a great way of phrasing it. And we used, so we've got a quantum technology grading tool. This was an earlier version of that, and it provides a kind of 360-degree assessment of the technology. And as we started doing that, we discovered that there's already plenty of good information in the data room. It just hadn't been well integrated and perhaps hadn't been subject to the extra layer of analysis. So if you just picture a little radar chart now, where you've got a whole range of performance and safety characteristics, an independent benchmarking of this new innovative technology against the same old industry standard. And against every single one of those measures, there was a big, significant uplift. And, that data was there, but it had never been presented in that way. So we pulled that together as part of our grading process, and then spent time with a patent attorney. That technology had 13 patent families, multiple jurisdictions.
Right.
And we worked out what technical features gave rise to those performance and safety benefits, and then went a step further back and said, are those technical features protected by claims of the patent? And the good news was they were. So, that's obviously a key thing, because you might have great,
Validation, yes.
but yes, and if your technology is not, if the important components aren't protected, someone else is going to enjoy the benefits.
AI powered due diligence and deal sourcing. Now, how do you all feel towards AI being used in these portfolios as valuers? Are you for it? Are you against it? Or how do you feel towards this AI powered due diligence and deal sourcing?
Institutions in United States that they have taken a stab at it, companies like Carta, companies like Equivest,
Mhm.
that they are pretty much have done over 20,000 valuations, and they have gone through what we call muster tests, like with SEC, with the bankers, with the financial authorities, because they had to get funded. So this kind of things is a gradual process. But I believe the combination of human and AI agent is going to become the power pack. But at the end of the day, you need sign off. Okay, you cannot have the AI to say, okay, I sign off on this, because there is not going to be any approval by the third parties. So that validation, that's one of the reasons that Maxwell ran is
Yeah,
honored and happy to work with Quantum, because
exactly.
that
That's yeah.
sign off has to come from that
Yes,
source of authorities. So
yes,
AI becomes only an intermediate tool as a technology that proves and provides and obtains the information for the checklist. And then you use that checklist to create the variables and the missing variables, so the management can become more effective and more focused without wasting valuable time.
Now, these questions are directed to Dr. Moradi, and if both you gentlemen want to chip in, it will be more than welcome. Dr. Moradi, what are the major global trends driving M&A activity today?
Well, there are different regions with different kind of demographics and different kind of needs. For instance, in the United States, we have a generation of what we call baby boomers. The baby boomers constitute a lot of small businesses that now their children have become a professional, a doctor, an attorney, or something, and they don't want to run mom and dad's restaurant, for example, or the food business, or any of these kind of things. So M&A has become very substantial in the United States, where mid-sized companies are acquiring small businesses, and then they create their portfolio. Then ultimately they sell it to larger institutions.
Thank you very much. We have got a lot of deep insights now. Valuing what you can't touch is now central to building sustainable corporate growth. And once again, I would like to congratulate Maxwell Inc. and Quantum Valuations collaboration as a paradigm shift